The scanner flagged 13 separate weapon signatures from Cadet Wren.
13. The record was 4. A Garathi cadet, 3rd year.
She's first year, first day.
The Coalition Military Academy at Saraf had operated its mandatory disarmament protocol for 111 years without significant incident. The protocol was comprehensive. Every incoming cadet, regardless of species, rank, or prior military background, surrendered all personal weapons at the outer courtyard checkpoint before crossing the academy threshold. The surrender was scanned, logged, catalogued, and stored for the duration of the cadets' first orientation week, during which no personal weapons were permitted anywhere on academy grounds. The reasoning was pedagogical. The academy wanted cadets to begin their training understanding that the institution itself provided all necessary tools, and that arriving with your own arsenal suggested either distrust of the institution or a failure to read the enrollment documentation. 111 years. No significant incident. Cadet Wren Ashby had read the enrollment documentation thoroughly. She had read it the same way she read all operational documentation, not for what it said but for what it assumed. The disarmament protocol assumed that cadets would bring whatever weapons they habitually carried. It assumed that the scanner at the outer checkpoint, which operated on standard coalition frequency bands, would detect those weapons. It assumed that a first-year cadet arriving on the first day of orientation would be operating within the parameters of what first-year cadets arriving on the first day of orientation typically did. Wren had spent the 3 weeks before enrollment making a jacket. Not the jacket itself. The jacket was standard-issue Cadet Navy, purchased through official academy suppliers, identical to the one every other incoming cadet was wearing. What she had made was the lining. 47 hours of work across 3 weeks, in the evenings after her pre-enrollment coursework, producing a custom interior architecture of carbon fiber holster channels, vibration-damped weapon mounts, and scanner-defeating composite material woven into the fabric at a density that disrupted the Academy's standard frequency scan by producing interference patterns that registered as jacket material rather than metal. 13 weapons. Each selected for a specific function, a specific weight distribution, a specific reason. Not randomly. The way a carpenter selects tools for a job, nothing unnecessary, nothing redundant, everything present because its absence would leave a gap. The outer courtyard checkpoint on the first morning of orientation was, as designed, thorough. Inspector Vorath ran the standard scan on every cadet in the line. 41 cadets from 19 species, all surrendering their personal items with the varying degrees of reluctance that species with different relationships to personal armament tended to display. The Garathi cadet gave up 4 weapons and looked unhappy about it. The Sevik cadet surrendered a ceremonial blade with the specific dignity of someone who wanted the inspector to understand it was ceremonial. The Drellan cadets, who had arrived with nothing visible, submitted to the scan with the expressions of people who had read the documentation and complied in advance. Wren submitted to the scan. The scanner registered 1 cadet, 1 jacket, standard material, no weapons. Vorath checked it twice, because the second check was procedure, and logged her as clear. She was 40 meters inside the academy threshold when the secondary scanner at the inner gate, a deeper frequency system used for the main building entrance, running on a different band than the outer checkpoint, flagged 13 distinct weapon signatures from the cadet in Navy Jacket number 17. Vorath was called back from the outer courtyard. Senior Officer Dane arrived from the administration building. 2 additional officers materialized from somewhere with the specific speed of people who had been monitoring and found a reason to stop monitoring from a distance. Wren was standing at the inner gate with the same expression she had worn at the outer checkpoint, level, direct, chin slightly raised, when Vorath showed her the scanner results. 13, he said. The number, stated plainly, as a complete sentence. Wren opened her jacket. The interior was, by every account subsequently given by the 4 officers present, one of the most remarkable things any of them had seen in a professional context. Not because of the weapons themselves, though each one was present, accounted for, and seated in its custom mount with the precision of something that had been thought about carefully, but because of the architecture. The holster channels. The mount design. The weight distribution across the jacket's interior that had kept the garment hanging exactly as a standard-issue cadet jacket hung, with no visible asymmetry or bulk, despite carrying 13 items that by rights should have been detectable, visible, or at minimum uncomfortable. Officer Dane, who had 17 years of academy experience and had processed intake for approximately 900 cadets, looked at the jacket interior for a long moment. "How?" he said. Not accusatory. genuinely asking. The outer checkpoint runs on Coalition Standard Band 7, Wren said. The composite weave in the lining produces interference on Band 7 at a density that reads as fabric. The inner gate runs on Band 11, which the weave doesn't fully suppress. I didn't have access to the inner gate's frequency specifications before arrival, so I was working from probability estimates on what secondary systems typically use. A brief pause. Band 11 was my second guess. If it had been Band 9, you probably wouldn't have found them at all. The courtyard was quiet for a moment in the specific way of a space where everyone present is processing the same information at different speeds. You built this in 3 weeks, Dane said. It was not entirely a question. 47 hours, Wren said. The holster channels were the most time-consuming part. The vibration damping took longer than I expected. Voritha's scanner was still active in his hand. He looked at it, then at Wren, then back at it, with the expression of a professional whose instrument had performed correctly and yet somehow felt responsible for the situation. The regulation, Senior Officer Dane said carefully, prohibits bringing weapons past the outer checkpoint. Yes, Wren said. You passed the outer checkpoint. The outer checkpoint cleared me, Wren said. The outer checkpoint scanner registered no weapons. Procedurally, I complied with what the outer checkpoint scanner was capable of detecting. The silence that followed this had a different quality than the previous silence. It was the silence of people considering a sentence that is technically accurate and professionally infuriating in equal measure. Officer Breveth, the fourth officer present, who had, at some point during the jacket inspection, produced his own notebook and begun writing in it with the focused energy of someone who has shifted categories from enforcer to researcher, looked up. The 13th weapon, he said. At the collar. Was that deliberate placement? Everything was deliberate, Wren said. You knew we'd count 12 and look for more. I thought it was probable, Wren said. I wanted to see if the assumption held. Dane looked at her for a very long time. 17 years of intake processing. 900 cadets. He had never, in any of those years, written a disciplinary report that he was simultaneously composing and uncertain how to categorize. Cadet Ashby, he said finally. The weapons will be surrendered and logged per protocol. Understood, Wren said. The jacket lining will be submitted to the Academy's Materials Division for analysis. Also understood. And you will report to the Tactical Innovation Office at 0700 tomorrow. He held her gaze with the expression of someone making a decision he hadn't entirely planned to make. Not for disciplinary review. For a meeting with Director Austin, who designs our security systems and will, I suspect, find your frequency analysis considerably more interesting than I am currently authorized to describe. Wren closed her jacket with the same unhurried composure she had opened it with. I'll be there, she said. Breveth was still writing in his notebook. As Wren was escorted to the weapons surrender table, he wrote at the bottom of his notes, underlined, First day. First year. Ask Austin about the Band 9 comment. 3 months later, the outer checkpoint no longer ran exclusively on Band 7. 6 months later, the Academy's intake scanners had been redesigned around frequency layer detection based partly on recommendations from Director Austin's review. The internal memorandum documenting the revision contained an unusual footnote. Prompted by Cadet Wren Ashby's Orientation Day demonstration. Inspector Vorith read the memorandum during the annual security update, looked at the words for a long moment, and then wrote a single note in the margin of his own training manual. Never assume the scanner is the cleverest thing at the checkpoint. The end. Please like and subscribe.